Okay, welcome back. For today's project, we're going to be doing a tune-up on an 06 Saab 9.3. We're going to be replacing the spark plugs with NGK plugs as per the manufacturer's recommendation, replacing the cabin air filter, as well as we'll be using some dielectric grease and some anti-seize lubricant for the installation of the spark plugs. So now that you see what we're doing here with just the basic parts, now let's go out to the car and get dirty. The tools that you're going to want for this job, you're going to want a regular flat blade screwdriver for changing the air filter. You're going to want a couple of Torx wrenches, a T25 and a T30. You may also want a T30 or a T25 bit. You're also going to need a 16mm deep well socket or spark plug socket. You're going to want a torque wrench. You're also going to want a pair of spark plug pliers or a pair of adjustable needle nose pliers. It's a little weird to find, but they're out there. You're also going to want a socket extension of about 6 inches or slightly more. You're also going to want a 10mm socket. In this case here I use a 10mm socket and a interchangeable. I can just swap this off here on the end. And if you have a 10mm nut driver, that would work as well. So everything here is going to be hand tools, no power tools. Do not use a power tool on this. You want to do this all by hand.
I'm going to go ahead and use my Torx wrench to be able to remove the spark plug cover here. This also may be where you want to use the Torx socket bit if you have one to get that cover removed if your screws are tightened down a little bit too tight. Keep track of these screws and set them aside, maybe in a parts bin. And then now I'm moving on to loosen up the hose to get to my air filter. With that loose, I can undo the screws around the side of the air filter cover and remove the top housing case and set it aside. Here you can see I found some leaves and other debris inside my air filter chamber, and you can see my dirty air filter there. So before I put this back together, I'm going to use my shop vac and be able to hose out the inside of that to get all the debris out, making sure I get all the way down through the air pipeways, or the airways, and make sure it's all nice and clean. And then once I've got that done, I'm going to install my man filter. That just drops right into place. Make sure it's sealed up all nice, put the cover back on. Reinstall the screws. This is again going to use one of the Torx screwdrivers. If you don't use that, you can use your Torx bit. And then come back and make sure you get the air hose properly tightened. Now I'm going back over and beginning work on the spark plugs. And so now I'm going to loosen up there's a 10mm nut on each spark plug cover. Loosen that up, working from left to right. And with each of those loose, now you can just pull up on the little control mechanism to be able to remove the spark plug caps from the spark plug wires. Those all comes as right out of the socket here. And now you can access the spark plugs. Use your spark plug wrench and then we'll pull those out. So I'm at least going to loosen them all the way out individually, one by one, with my wrench. And once they're all loose, I'll go come back later with my pliers and be able to pull each one of those out from the respective sockets. You may have to make sure that they're completely unthreaded and come back with your sockets or your spark plug pliers and pop them out. And then with each of those out, in this case here I found some really cheap AC Delco plugs that were not per the manufacturer's recommendation. Here's my NGK plugs. I'm going to take those out one by one. These all come pre-gapped. There's no need to get out your spark plug gaps, and you can look at the end. There's a very fine tip there for the ignition, as you can find since these are premium plugs. You only need 4 of these on the 4-cylinder here. Then I'm going to take my anti-seize and put that around the threads at the bottom. I probably should have been wearing gloves while I did this. Obviously I didn't. And go around the threads individually at the bottom. And once that's done, you can see I got my shop towel there. And then I'm going to come back with my dielectric grease, and I'm going to coat the white part of the white porcelain part of the plug here at the top. Put a little dab of grease on each of those. And I'll come back with a cloth and make sure I wrap it all the way around. Make sure you don't get any of it on the electrode on the top of your spark plug. You just want it around the porcelain part of the plug. So then you got dielectric grease on the bottom. I'm sorry, the anti-seize at the bottom, the dielectric grease around the top. And then with each of those plugs there, I can come back and grab those and start dropping those individually one by one back into the engine block. 1, 2, 3, and 4 coming right up. And those just set right down. And once I get those carefully placed into the engine block, I'll be able to come back with just my basic socket wrench and tighten it up loosely. I'll come back later with the torque wrench You can see I got all the plugs in now. Come back here, I'm just going to use it my hand. I took the wrench off and I'm just using the extension and my socket there just to get them kind of hand tight here. I'm going to come back with my torque wrench here. I got this set to 20 foot-pounds. And I'm going to go until my torque wrench clicks just right. Once those click off, I'm going to move on to the next plug, making sure I've got the proper torque on the plugs. You don't want to tighten the plugs or risk stripping out the threads. Work carefully, take your time, make sure you do this right. And then now on the spark plug boots, I'm going to put the dielectric grease around the outside of these. This is going to require a lot more dielectric grease. Wipe that thoroughly, give that a nice coating around the outside. This will help lubricate it on the way in and ensure that the spark stays in the proper place for the spark on the boot. And then we're going to put these and we're going to work from right to left, going back across. And you see they just pop right in. These go in relatively easily. And then we'll start connecting our spark plug wires back, working from right to left. And finally come back with our 10mm wrench, and we'll drop in the little bolts that hold down the spark plug boots into the spark plug area. And once that's done, we put our cover back on, tighten it right down, and then we're all done. This all in all takes maybe about 30 to 35 minutes, depending upon how fast you work and having your tools ready.
Simple repair, parts cost about 80 bucks. If you're a Saab owner, I hope you found this useful, or even if you work on Saabs, I hope you found this useful, and have a great day.